convent chapel smelled like pine needles, lemon oil, and the lingering ghost of incense burned in 1978 that still refused to leave the premises. The stained glass windows had that soft boiled candy glow they only managed on winter evenings. Everyone stood in a circle, hands linked, heads bowed. Even Ralph the parrot bowed his head, though his idea of reverence was suspiciously similar to plotting murder. The prayer fell to Sister Dorothea, because it always did when the situation was either wholly dangerous or just plain stupid. Dorothea drew in a deep breath. Her voice rose in the dim chapel, slow as honey in cold weather. "Lord," she said, "we gather here in this ragged little circle of mismatched souls, and we thank you for blessings we expected, blessings we didn't expect, and blessings we would have frankly preferred not to receive, like that time the statue of Santa Celia started singing Bay and Say." Professor Voss crossed himself in an alarmed Protestant sort of way. Dorothea continued, "We stand here remembering Concepcion, who walked this earth with fire in her steps and that stubborn shine in her eyes. She loved this convent, even when it didn't love her back as loudly as it should have. She was the kind of woman you couldn't ignore, even if she said nothing at all. Especially if she said nothing at all. We honor her tonight." Clotilda sniffled. "She still visits me in dreams. She yells at me for my posture." "That tracks," Germain whispered. Dorothea squeezed his hand. "And Lord, we ask your blessing on this year's convent Christmas party. Let the food be edible. Let the electricity cooperate. Let Sister Clotilde's blood pressure behave. And if you could loan us an angel or two to keep the chaos from killing us, that'd be grand." "Amen. Amen," the circle echoed. Honey the tiny magical horse trotted once around the chapel, scattering a trail of glitter that smelled faintly like peppermint schnapps. Someone not naming names had definitely been feeding Honey holiday treats that were not intended for minors or horses. Gumbo leaned on his cane, eyes crinkling warmly. "Dorothea, that was a fine prayer." "It was mostly begging," she muttered, optimism with a side of fear. "Same as the saints," he said. Before Dorothea could respond, the chapel doors slammed open like they'd been kicked by divine intervention, or a hyperactive second grader. Chaos Cato, formerly Cora, now 8 years old and trying desperately to be normal, stumbled in, wearing a backpack that seemed to glow faintly. "Hi," he chirped, breathless. "They let me stay after school today for Christmas crafts. I made a macaroni angel, but the glue melted. Twice." Clotilda's eyes went wide. "Chaos, sweetheart, why is your backpack humming?" "It's not humming," he said brightly. "It's whispering." Everyone froze. Ralph the parrot muttered, "Oh, hell." Chaos unzipped the bag. Inside was an object that looked older than the moon and twice as rude. A fist-sized stone that pulsed with pearly white light, like a seashell that had decided to become sentient. It gave a soft thunk-thunk, like a heartbeat. Dorothea nearly fainted. "No. No. Absolutely not. Put it back. Zip the bag. Staple the bag shut. Burn the bag." Chaos held it up proudly. But it followed me. "Look!" The stone up and started rotating gently like a very smug planet. Loon, who had been trying to hang snowflake decorations on a tall ladder, muttered, "Sister Dorothea, the relic is staring." "It doesn't have eyes." Dorothea snapped. "It's staring anyway," Loon insisted. Meanwhile Merrick, running between the convent and the library with boxes of dusty hymnals, saw the floating stone and dropped all the hymnals on his foot. His scream echoed nicely. Sean Cato's fiancée stepped forward, drunk on confidence and the thrill of wanting to be helpful. "I studied geology in college for a semester. I can handle this." He poked the relic. The relic did not appreciate being poked. Lighting crackled across the ceiling. The Christmas tree flickered violently, then changed colours 17 times in 1 second. Ralph started speaking German, which he had never learned. Sean jumped back. "'T-okay, maybe don't let me handle that. You think?" Cato hissed. Professor Voss adjusted his glasses nervously. In the interest of academic caution, I must insist he tripped over Honey. There was a crunch, then a spark, then the sound of electricity having a nervous breakdown. The entire convent went dark. Someone, probably Merrick, shouted, "Who turned off existence?" Dorothea inhaled sharply. ready to unleash a lifetime of well-practiced holy rage. But before she could, an alarm began ringing somewhere across town. Germain pressed his face to the stained-glass window. "Oh, Grandma? That's coming from the museum." Clotilde blinked. "Which museum? The good museum? Or the weird museum?" Gumbo sighed. "Chilly. In this town they the same damn building." The alarm grew louder, shrill, and metallic and unsettling. Then it stopped abruptly, like something had silenced it, like something big. Moments later, a frantic pounding erupted at the back door of the convent. Heavy, targentian, snowy, snow. Germain frowned. "It ain't supposed to snow in BYU Saint-Mier." Clotilde whispered, "It ain't snowing." Dorothea felt the hairs rise on her arms. "Whoever that is, don't open it yet." But Honey trotted over and flipped the latch with her nose, because Honey absolutely respected no boundaries. The back door swung open. A man stumbled inside. Big boots, red coat, white beard like a thundercloud that had settled down, eyes bright as embers. He looked exactly, unmistakably, word for word Santa Claus. "Evening," he wheezed. "I believe you have something that belongs to me." His gaze clicked straight to chaos, then to the relic floating above him. Dorothea whispered, "Lord have mercy." Santa smiled without joy. "I'm afraid mercy's not on the menu tonight." Before anyone could speak, a scream tore across the courtyard. A real scream, not the theatrical kind Merrick made when he stubbed his toe, not the startled kind Sean made when he saw bees, not the gossip kind Clotilde made when she saw a handsome UPS man. A scream of genuine terror. They rushed outside. Snowflakes drifted from a sky that had no business producing them. Soft at first, then hard, like salt thrown by a furious chef. And there, in the middle of the courtyard, half covered in impossible snow, lay a body, unmoving, fast parlour, eyes closed, breath gone. Anasaiti, gentle, magical Anawas sprawled in the snow, unresponsive. Chaos dropped his backpack. Santa stepped forward, boots crunching. "This," Santa said quietly, "is only the beginning. Snow shouldn't fall in Bayou Saint-Mier. Not the wet kind, not the dry kind, not even the decorative kind that Dollar Tree sells around Thanksgiving. But here it was, swooping down from the sky like a drunk angel." Dorothea knelt in the courtyard beside Anne's motionless body. The snow around her steamed. That was new. That was concerning. Gumbo and Clotilde hovered close, whispering prayers under their breath. Germain paced in frantic loops like a man trying to outrun his own thoughts. Ralph the parrot kept muttering, "This is bull, this is bull, this is bull," before remembering a nun was nearby and correcting himself to Bologna. "Yes, Bologna!" Santa or whatever stood there dressed as Santa watched them with a smile you'd never find on a greeting card. His eyes were wrong. Too deep, too old, too sharp, like needles carved from midnight. Dorothea inhaled slowly. Time to break a promise she'd made to God, Gumbo, Concepcion, and herself. The kind of old magic she'd locked up 40 years ago in a shoebox with a rosary. A love letter she shouldn't have kept, and a pair of fur-lined booties she bought in a moment of weakness. She stood. Clotilde caught her sleeve. "Dorothea?" "No." Dorothea's eyes didn't waver. "I can't let that thing take what's ours." Santa's voice dripped like molasses left too long in the sun. "You can't stop me." "Not you. Not the boy. Not your little convent of thrift store saints." Chaos stepped back, clutching his humming backpack. "I didn't mean to bring the thing home. It followed me." "I know," Santa purred. "Titmo's power when it sees it." Dorothea ignored him and kneeled again, not by Anne this time, but by the oldest part of the courtyard, the patch of dirt where the convent bones were buried. Bones of sisters long gone, bones that hummed with a strange second life energy whenever the veil between worlds thinned. They'd always behaved themselves, mostly. Dorothea brushed off the snow and whispered, "Sisters, singers, daughters of the old choir, I need your help." The dirt shifted. A faint glow pulsed up from beneath the ground. Clotilde staggered back. "Lord above, it's happening again." Germain whispered, "Grandma, I thought you said the bones didn't talk anymore." "They don't," Dorothea said. "They sing. And sing they did. a faint, eerie harmony lifted from the soil. The voices were soft at first, like a distant choir warming up before Mass, but soon the notes grew sharp, insistent, electric. The snow melted around the patch. The air shimmered as though touched by heat. Dorothea began her old incantation. Not Latin, not English, not anything she'd admit to knowing. It was the language her mother taught her during the strange year Dorothea spent in Fatima, studying miracles the church didn't like to admit were miracles at all. It was the same language she whispered the night Scott the Armless, legless mystic the town used to half-worship, appeared at her bedside to deliver a vision about the return of snow to a place that hates snow. The same language she swore never to speak again. Santa stepped forward. "Stop that." Dorothea kept chanting. Santa's face twisted. I said stop. Ralph the parrot shrieked, "Fight him!" Which was notable because Ralph usually only encouraged violence when it came to mailmen or people wearing cologne. The ground cracked. A plume of light shot up, and suddenly something impossible happened. The Bons Every, last sacred bone under that courtyard, rose through the earth in a slow, swirling dance. Femurs, skull fragments, ribs, little toe bones, pelvises, all of it rising like a gruesome snow globe turned upside down. And they formed choreography. Perfect, synchronized, extremely theatrical choreography. Clotilda gasped. "It's the Christmas pageant dance number from last year." Germaine blinked. The bones memorized the routine? Of course they memorized it. Dorothea snapped. They used to be nuns. Nuns are terrifyingly committed to performance schedules. The bones twirled. They shimmered. They spelled out shapes in the air stars, crosses, the outline of a Siamese cat for some reason, and then locked themselves into position at the foot of the courtyard, like they were daring Santa to critique their form. Santa snarled, "This is not your power to summon." Dorothea raised her chin. "It's ancestral magic. You don't own that." Snow swirled violently. The wind howled, carrying the scent of all things Rancho Grande coleslaw from down the street. Dorothea wasn't sure whether that was part of the spell or just Bayou Samir being itself. Santa's voice boomed. "I will take the relic." And the boy. Chaos trembled. "No." "You don't have a choice," Santa said. Dorothea lifted her hands. The bones glowed brighter. "He does. And so do we." Santa laughed. "You can't fight me with old bones and cheap magic." Dorothea said softly, "Watch me." The storm cracked open, and just as Santa lunged toward Chaos, honey, the tiny horse ran full speed into him like a furry little missile. Santa stumbled backwards so hard his wig, or was it hair, flew off and flipped into the snow. Underneath was a head far more monstrous, something horned, shadowed, and ancient. Germaine screamed. "Santa is a demon goat man?" Clotilda clutched her heart. "Mariah Carey warned us. She warned us every year." Santa roared in rage, his true form flickering through the red suit like a glitchy cartoon villain. "You meddle in things beyond your comprehension." Dorothea glared. "You threaten my family." "That's something I understand perfectly." The bones rose higher. Chaos's relic blazed like a tiny sun. And then a moment no one could fully explain. Later the relic shot a beam of light into the swirling bones, which reflected it like a disco ball from the bad side of town. The whole courtyard filled with blinding brilliance. Santa screamed an unholy, furious scream that echoed all the way to Lake Pontchartrain. And then, silence. When the light faded, Santa was gone. Just gone. And I lay still. Chaos clutched his backpack. The bones folded themselves neatly back into the ground like they'd simply punched a clock and gone home. Dorothea dropped to her knees, exhausted. "Sweet Lord." "I need Chardonnay," Clotilda murmured. "Dorothea." That was not in the act of contrition. "It is now." Germaine pointed suddenly. "Wait, look." Anne's fingers twitched. Then their eyes fluttered open, full of confusion and frost and something else a shimmer like they'd dreamed of somewhere far away. They whispered something faint, almost too faint to hear. "He's not finished." The wind picked up. A distant sleigh bell rang low, cold and promising trouble. Bayou Samir warmed back into its usual humid winter chaos in the days after the attack, though the weather kept behaving like it had unresolved trauma. At 1 minute the air shimmered with heat, as if Jesus himself had turned the thermostat the wrong way. and the next minute snowflakes fell sideways with the thoughtless rudeness of tourists. But inside the convent, life surged forward with the stubborn, glitter-encrusted optimism only nuns could muster. The Christmas pageant was happening. Demon goat Santa or not, Dorothea insisted on it. Clotilda backed her up. Gumbo made gumbo and said nothing because he knew better. Tat, and so they forged ahead. The convent halls bustled with sequined halos, duct-tape shepherd staffs, Germain hot-gluing props he didn't understand, and a suspicious amount of muffin crumbs from Ralph the parrot, who kept stealing baked goods and denying it with the confidence of a politician. Chaos practiced his lines in the corner, holding the relic in a backpack that still warmed and pulsed like it had a heartbeat. Glory to God in the highest, he whispered to himself, wanting so badly to be normal. Glory to the relic pulsed once. Chaos sighed. I said normal. Anne walked slowly beside him, still pale from the courtyard incident, but recovering with a strange speed. Every now and then, a shimmer passed across their eyes, and they'd mutter fragments of things no one could interpret. "He's still near," they told Dorothea that morning. "In the rafters." In the cracks between breaths, Dorothea had nodded with the weary acceptance of someone who had lived a life filled with miracles she didn't want, and problems she didn't choose. Just don't mention it during the pageant. We need donors to feel safe. The bizarre incident before the pageant, the dress rehearsal, happened the night before the event, and that's when the first disaster struck. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, it wasn't even immediately noticeable, but it was deeply cosmically weird. As the cast rehearsed the nativity tableau, the bones in the courtyard began to act up again. The ground vibrated softly like a cat purring, and then maddeningly. Inevitably the earth cracked open just enough for a cluster of ancient finger bones to roll out into the hallway like escapees planning something. Germain screamed. "They're back. The bones are loose." Dorothea caught one mid-roll and examined it. "Sister Scholastica, I recognise that knuckle." She sighed, put her in the basket with the others. Clotilda pinched the bridge of her nose. "Dorothea, this is not normal." "In this town," Dorothea said, "normal is suspicious." The bones kept migrating all night, trying to assemble themselves into the cast list. Apparently they wanted to open the show. The frightening accident during the pageant Christmas Eve's crowd packed the convent auditorium. Parents, neighbours, donors, curious passers-by, and at least 2 people who wandered in thinking it was the line for a free ham raffle. Cato, Sean, Lunnon, Merrick, Voss, Germain, Anne, Chaos, Gumbo, and the entire convent staff peppered the aisles in bright anticipation. Ralph perched on Gumbo's shoulder dressed as a festive shepherd and muttering, "Praise be," like he was auditioning for a cult. The curtains opened. The music began. And for 20 minutes, everything went shockingly well. Then came the angel chorus section, a sequence that featured Chaos lifting a star-shaped prop to the heavens. But when he raised the relic star, the real relic inside his backpack responded. The stage lights flickered. A low hum filled the room. The air shimmered like someone had cracked open a cosmic door. Clotilda whispered, "Dorothea, something's happening." Before Dorothea could respond, a blast of light erupted from Chaos's backpack. The nativity star prop shattered into glitter. The cardboard manger burst into flames shaped suspiciously like a chicken. The auditorium went dark. Then something far worse happened. The relic opened a small tear in the air, just a few inches wide but enough for something to push through. A hand, thin, blackened, smelling faintly of peppermint and hell. Santa's hand. Chaos screamed. The children screamed. Ralph screamed profanity Dorothea pretended not to understand. Dorothea acted fast. She snatched the bundle of rebellious bones she had hidden under the stage insurance sand, flung them toward the tier. The bones animated mid-air, forming a barrier of ancient rib cages, femurs, and little nun skulls that glowed like they'd been dipped in divine sunlight. The hand recoiled. The tier snapped shut. Dorothea hit her knees, panting. The audience burst into applause, thinking it was special effects. Germain fainted into Gumbo's lap. Chaos whispered, "I didn't mean to. I really didn't mean to." Dorothea held his face gently. "I know, little one." The astounding revelation after the pageant, the crowd dispersed. Kids grabbed cookies. Parents gossiped. No one realized the universe had nearly folded in half. But in the backstage hallway, the truth arrived. Tane walked stiffly toward the group, eyes glowing faintly. I know who Santa is, they whispered. Everyone froze. Who? Dorothea asked quietly. Anne swallowed. He was a caretaker at the convent. Decades ago. Before the fire. Before the town forgot him. Sean blinked. Forgot him how? Didn't like him or actually forgot? Actually forgot, Anne said. Wiped from memory. From records. From photographs. Clotilde shuddered. To man erased from time? Anne nodded. And he's trying to claw his way back. Chaos clutched Dorothea's sleeve. He said he wanted me. He wants the relic, Dorothea said. Or just the flashlight he can see it with. The room fell silent. Then the door to the courtyard creaked open. Snow drifted in. And there standing in the moonlight was Concepcion. Not alive, not dead, not entirely one thing or the other. Just shimmering, like a reflection someone forgot to delete. She spoke only once. He's coming. Then she vanished. The snow stopped falling. A bell rang somewhere in the distance. And Christmas Eve officially began. Christmas Eve settled over St. Peregrine's convent like a velvet nightgown left out on a dirt road soft, out of place, and gathering dust from the passing world. The pageant earlier had shaken everyone, left their nerves jangling like broomsticks clattering against stone. But traditions were stubborn creatures. And this night had its own ritual, one older than Louisiana sugarcane and twice as sticky. Sister Dorothea lit the first candle in the chapel. It flickered as though remembering all the old spells she had once whispered decades before the church tried to rein her in. She stood barefoot, hair loose for the ritual, humming the same tune she hummed when she cooked gumbo seasoned with equal parts prayer and profanity. The others gathered slowly. Clotilde brought the brass bowl. Gumbo carried the quilt embroidered with the family's history. Germaine lugged in the battered box of ritual items a collection that always looked like it had been curated by a Mexican lady who loved romance novels and had strong opinions about visible penis lines. Ralph the parrot sat on Gumbo's shoulder muttering, "Toucan Sam! Toucan Sam! Follow the rainbow, you nasty thing!" Chaos arrived last, wearing his school uniform under a hoodie. He stayed close to little Honey, the magical horse, who trotted beside him with serene authority. Honey's hooves clicked in soft, musical beats, like chopsticks tapping on porcelain. The large mirror the magic one recovered from Concepcion's belongings hung in its ceremonial place behind the altar. They had draped it in black lace for the ritual. That mirror was never invited lightly. Cato and Sean arrived together, hand in hand. Still shaken from the pageant's accident, Sister Verena slipping on a bowl of spilled coleslaw, flying across the stage like a broken angel, accidentally lighting the nativity backdrop on fire. The pigs in blankets had somehow gotten fused into the fabric of the wise men robes. Everyone was still apologizing. To no one had identified the strange shimmering figure seen in the rafters. Loon and Merrick entered last, flushed from sprinting around the convent all day, prepping for emergencies. Merrick clutched his chest. "Heart palpitations again," he groaned. Loon swatted him. "You ate too much etouffee. You do this every year." Professor Voss limped in, the museum still on his mind. The bones in the convent reliquary had rattled unnaturally earlier, and something had followed him home. He didn't know how to say that yet. When everyone stood in a circle, Dorothea raised her hands. "This night," she said, "was born from a time before we turned miracles into paperwork. Remember that." They all bowed their heads. The ritual began with the mixing of the bowl, a strange recipe of split pea soup. Ashes from the last candle of Advent, crushed rosemary, and 3 drops of Chardonnay. Gumbo stirred it solemnly with a carved spoon shaped like a saint with a suspiciously mischievous face. Germaine held up the quilt over the circle. Ralph squawked the act of contrition almost correctly. Honey snorted, and the air shimmered. Then Dorothea lifted the lace from the mirror. Light poured out like breath from a sleeping giant. Tin Concepcion appeared. Her image was crisp, glowing, more alive than memory should allow. She wore a white veil and smiled a private smile. "Children," she said, "listen carefully." Chaos swayed on his feet, sensing the weight of her voice. The mirror hummed. Dorothea felt her old spells rise like steam through her skin. "You are about to face danger. One of you is not what they seem." Her eyes moved across each of them, slow, painful, loving. "Trust the smallest sign. Trust the horse. Trust the child." The mirror crackled. To sound like ice breaking on a Louisiana bayou rang out, and then the image twisted. Not Concepcion's face, but something riding behind it. Something that had followed Professor Voss from the museum. Something older. Something hungry. Honey reared, mane glowing. Chaos shouted. The mirror went white. The chapel door slammed open with a crack loud enough to jolt even the dead. A figure stumbled in. Santa, or someone wearing the costume like a stolen skin. His beard was crooked. His eyes were wrong, swirling with too many colours, like a kaleidoscope possessed by a demon with a Fort Worth zip code. The jolly red suit bulged in odd shapes, as though something underneath was growing the wrong number of limbs. Ho, ho, the figure rasped. Ho. Gumbo pulled Germaine behind him. Clotilde clutched her rosary. Ralph shrieked, jonesing for crack. Jonesing for crack! No one corrected him. Santa staggered forward. Sean stepped up, trying to be brave, still thinking he could handle danger the way he handled chores by faking confidence. Sir, you're at the wrong building. Santa grinned slowly. His teeth shifted. Nobody's at the wrong building tonight. Chaos screamed, and the lights shattered above them. Tunny lunged. The fake Santa hissed. The mirror burst. The chapel went black when the lights flickered back to life. Santa was gone, but someone else was missing too. The door stood wide open. Cold wind blew in. Louisiana never froze like that. They raced outside, feet crunching in the impossible snow. And there, lying under the cypress tree, half buried in white frost, was the unmoving form of Merrick. Fast parlour. Breath gone. Snow melting slowly on his eyelashes. Unresponsive. And above the body, carved into the snow by an unseen hand, were two chilling words. He's back. The night tilted. Christmas Eve held its breath, and the ritual candles inside flickered one by one, as though blown out by an invisible mouth. The story ended there on the cliff of a cliff, the edge of something enormous and terrible, poised to swallow the town whole. Christmas morning in St. Gertrude of the Holy Laundry began with a fragile kind of quiet, the sort of hush that only comes after too much adrenaline and too many confessions whispered over cooling mugs of café au lait. The convent walls still smelled faintly of split-pea soup and cinnamon incense. The pageant debris lay scattered across the floor like the leftover feathers of a burlesque angel that took a wrong turn at Albuquerque. And still, somehow, there was peace. Sister Dorothea rose first, stretching the knots out of her shoulders with a groan that suggested every decade of her life. Plus a bonus 12 years earned through nonsense. Her nightgown plaid, threadbare, and boldly unsexy brushed the cold tile as she shuffled toward the chapel. Gumbo followed, humming a tune that predated gun control arguments and free love communes, something his grandmother once sang about rivers that knew too much. Clotilde sat cross-legged on the floor of the hallway, clutching her broken rosary beads. She wasn't praying, just counting the beads as if they were tiny promises she hadn't gotten around to cashing in yet. Honey, the tiny magical horse, nosed her shoulder, leaving glitter on her sleeve that shimmered like moon-landing dust. Germaine slept sitting up on the couch, wrestling in his dreams with whatever trauma comes from nearly dying during a Christmas pageant. Sean had passed out on the floor beside him, clutching an electric toothbrush he mistakenly thought was a microphone after drinking too much horchata spiked Chardonnay the night before. Cato slept curled into a ball on the rug, murmuring about romance novels with shirtless cowboys and adult arcades where nobody plays games with tokens, just feelings. Professor Voss, patched up from his misadventures, lay in a recliner with an ice pack on his forehead, muttering the phrase the moon landing was absolutely real. But the government still lied about the angles in his sleep, because some men refused to rest without one lingering conspiracy. The morning sun rose, and the scent of etouffee drifted through the halls courtesy of Loon and Merrick, who believed the best way to recover from terror was through butter. Ralph the parrot waddled in wearing a tiny knitted scarf and screaming, "Canasta! Canasta!" Somebody play canasta with me, which he had learned from Gumbo's late wife. Rest her feather-loving soul. But the peace was short-lived, because Christmas miracles always come with fine print, and one person in that convent, one sweet, trusted, seemingly harmless soul, had been lying since the very beginning. It started when Cato found the envelope. She had stepped outside to breathe the cold air, the freak snowstorm still blanketing Louisiana in a way that felt like weather plagiarism. She noticed the envelope peeking out from beneath the bench on the porch, weighted down by a peppermint stick. Her name was written on the front, but not in handwriting she recognized. Inside was a note. 4 words. 4 devastating words. He wasn't Santa Sugar. Cato marched back inside, furious, confused, heart thrumming like a jukebox stuck on Joan Jett's greatest hits. The convent gathered around as she read the note aloud. Dorothea's jaw clenched. Gumbo muttered something in Creole that translated roughly to Lord. This again. Cottled whispered, but he seemed so jolly. Sean, rubbing sleep from his eyes, said, "Who cares? I'm jonesing for crack weight. No, I mean coffee. Coffee. Ignore. Me." Then honey stiffened fur bristling, horn twitching, eyes glowing with that eerie shimmer that usually meant danger, revelation, or a very inconvenient miracle. A shadow moved in the doorway. Germaine gasped. Merrick clutched Loon's arm. Ralph shouted, "Gun control! Gun control! Gun control!" because he had no sense of timing. And then the truth walked into the room, or rather she walked in. Sister Immaculata. Quiet, mousy, helpful Sister Immaculata, who always served the coleslaw at church suppers, and had once organized a charity drive for electric toothbrushes for the elderly. Immaculata, who had never raised her voice or her eyebrows in her entire convent career. She stepped forward, expression strangely cold, and said, "I told him the back door would be unlocked." The whole room froze. Dorothea's voice cracked. "Baby." "Why?" Immaculata smiled the kind of smile that belongs on people who think the moon landing was filmed in a garage in Fort Worth. "Because," she said softly, "Conception wasn't supposed to stay dead. And the bones, her bones, belong to me, not this ridiculous convent. He promised he'd help me get them. Los huesos." The glowing, restless bones that had caused all the trouble. Honey reared back in alarm, magical light bursting off her tiny hooves. And before Immaculata could reach into her robe-wear something metallic glinted gumbo, moved with surprising speed for a man with arthritis and a fondness for fur-lined booties. He knocked the object from her hand. It skittered across the floor. An adult arcade key card, not a weapon, but still a threat of a different sort. Dorothea stepped forward, fury radiating off her like a heat lamp. "You don't get to touch Conception's bones again," she said. "You don't get to touch anything sacred." Immaculata tried to run. Honey galloped 3 feet, which for her was basically a sprint. She tapped Immaculata gently with one glittering hoof, and the woman froze in place, unable to move, blinking like someone who just discovered their own villainy was deeply inconvenient. It was over. Just like that. The convent exhaled as one body. By early afternoon, the police had arrived, taken statements, and left very confused about the magical horse, the glowing relics, and the parrot shouting, "Free love! Free love!" The officers as though preaching a gospel. Christmas gifts were opened. Sean got a new nightgown. Cato got chopsticks carved from driftwood. Germaine got sneakers that lit up. Clottle got a fresh rosary. Gumbo got an apron reading Rancho Grande Grill Master. Dorothea got piece rare, fragrant, temporary, but real. Honey got a tiny saddle made of velvet, which she immediately rejected in favour of chewing on the box. They laughed, they argued. They ate. They were family eccentric, haunted, bruised, but bonded through fire and foolishness. And just when the day began to soften into evening, Ralph screeched, "Visitor! Visitor!" A shimmer appeared in the doorway. Wind curled inward. The scent of something beyond the grave danced through the air like perfume. A shape materialized, round, legless, harmless, floating slightly above the floor. Scott, from the other side, their cosmic herald of chaos. He winked somehow and said, "You ready for New Year's or what?" And with that, the story ended not with calm but with possibility.